The Joe Rogan Experience.
Why are they mad at you? Is it just the articles you've written? Because somebody told me that you had been accused of doxing people. Is that true?
Absolutely not true. So this is such an outrageous defamatory claim. So what happened was on May Day at that riot, there was one of the Antifa women had charged in to participate in the fight during the brawl, and one of the right-wing person, he was wearing a mask, I don't know who he was, allegedly had hit her on her head, near her head, on her neck, somewhere like that. She was knocked out. I recognize this woman from her activism that day as the person who sabotaged the sound equipment when James Damore came to Portland State in February of last year. That was an event that I was involved in organizing at Portland State University.
And we should just explain to people, James Damore is the author of the Google memo that was talking about women in tech, that was wildly misrepresented what he had said, and people had claimed that he was this awful sexist. Even the CEO of YouTube said that he enforced harmful gender stereotypes, where while he was citing evolutionary psychology and citing all these different studies on why women gravitate towards particular fields, and even a page and a half encouraging or strategies to encourage more women to get into tech. But it was basically in response to things that Google had written about dealing with the lack of women in tech. What is the problem here? They were looking for a very particular answer, which was sexism. And he was saying, well, it actually has more to do with the choices that women sort of naturally tend to gravitate towards. And he was saying that there was a way to possibly encourage women to get into technology. And he devised these strategies to do so, but was wildly misrepresented. And if you meet the guy, and I've had him on the podcast, he is a soft-spoken sweetheart of a guy. He's not a misogynist, not a mean-spirited person. He was merely looking at the results of studies, and he was looking at real raw data, and that this real tendency that certain people have to gravitate towards certain positions in life.
Yeah, so there were so many misconceptions about James Damore, which is why the student group I was involved in was invited him to come. But Antifa and their allies just could not take that. They tried to shut down the event. They tried to get it canceled. At that event, this one woman, she damaged the sound equipment as she was trying to shut it down. She pulled all these cords out and pushed the soundboard on the ground. It broke. So I recognized her from that day. She was named in the media, and then on May Day, I recognized her. So I named her. I said, this is the name of the woman who was knocked out. I recognize her from the James Damore event protest where she had damaged equipment. And Antifa had spun that around as me doxing her. That's not doxing. Doxing is where you release people's personal details, such as where they work, where they live, their phone numbers, so that people will...
You identified her.
I named her, yes.
Okay.
But she had been identified in the media before. She was a big local activist.
So that's basically it. Other than you writing these stories, criticizing their behavior, what's disturbing to me, beyond disturbing, was legitimate journalists that were making excuses for why you got beat up. And people saying things like, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. I saw stuff like that. That pick a better hobby. I saw a guy write that. Anti-fascists will rule. Portland's not your place. I saw all this crazy shit from people with blue check marks that were saying that this is what happens when you support fascism. And I was so baffled by this. Like, I read some of your stuff. I haven't read all of it, admittedly. But I've read some of your stuff. None of it came off as you supporting fascism. It came off as you, maybe at the worst case scenario, being a contrarian and not wanting to go with this sort of left-wing ideology that is so widespread throughout the Pacific Northwest. But I didn't see any... I mean, first of all, you're not a white guy. We should explain to people. You are Vietnamese, and you're what they would consider a member of a protected class. You're not just a minority. You're openly gay. You're what do you consider yourself politically?
I've been avoiding labels for a while. I think it's interesting that a lot of the coverage on what happened to me always qualified who I am as like a conservative journalist.
Well, the worst
whatever.
thing is the way they're labeled Quillette. They said you work for far right newspaper or magazine Quillette, which is not the case at all. That's not true.
I think the dog whistles that they're trying to say in there that this person deserved it. And of course, these are the same people who always talk about believe the victim. They were the ones who jumped on to believe Jussie Smollett. But I guess I was the wrong type of victim.
Well, exactly, because even though you seem like a very nice person, you aren't doing anything violent, you're supporting the wrong thing or not supporting them. Not just blindly supporting what Antifa is involved with, which is that is what fascism is. I mean, if you can't even question some of the more heinous things, clearly heinous things they're doing, just fucking macing people in the audience, macing people in the crowd, just pointing it at people, yelling and screaming, hitting each other with things when you're wearing masks, getting involved in these brawls. It's so fucking stupid. It's so stupid to watch. It's like this is base human behavior in its worst example. And the fact that this dumbass fucking mayor thinks that this is a good idea to let this play itself out. This is how people get shot. This is how people die. When you allow a certain amount of violence and when you condone or don't do anything with violence that you can't defend, like violence against a person like yourself. I saw those guys hitting you in the back of the head, throwing milkshakes at you where you're just trying to walk away. You weren't doing anything.
Yeah, you asked me at the beginning, how did I get the brain hemorrhage? So the video that's gone viral out there is actually the second half of the beating. I don't know if there's video of the first half. Hopefully there is through CCTV or something. But there are more hits to my face and my head. And so when I went to the hospital, because of the nature of the contusions on my head, they did a CT scan in the ER, and that confirmed the subarachnoid hemorrhage.
So what started it? Why did you get hit?
Okay. 29th of June. Okay. That would be 10, 11 days ago from now. And so there was that demonstration happening. Antifa was rallying to oppose the far right. They claim oppose fascists. I was excited to use my new GoPro. I was a bit nervous. Going to the event, I was nervous because I'd been targeted just 2 months earlier, right? I left my house with a helmet, got in my car, saw briefly...
You wore a helmet?
I had a helmet. I did have one. Saw a reflection of myself, took it off, decided I don't want anybody there to get the impression that I came... Because they already accused me of being a Nazi and far right and white supremacist. I didn't want any of them to then perceive me by the fact that I came with a helmet as possibly a combatant. So I left it at home.
Can you be a Vietnamese white supremacist? Is that possible?
In their eyes, yes.
Hilarious.
This goes to the bigger issue that I've taken issue with how flippant people use these accusations of not just racist or being Nazi or far right, but it's like part of what makes Antifa so dangerous is that they feel that they are morally justified in their brutality. Yes. And they get actually a lot of morale from progressive and left-wing media. So after talking about what the attack, I would like to talk about how the actual militant Antifa people is small, those who are going out and doing the violence. The larger group, and those that I find more concerning actually, are the nonviolent Antifa.
You find those more concerning. Why?
Because they work to mainstream Antifa's tactics and ideas. Like now, doxing by Antifa is kind of seen as, well, these people deserve it. Do people not realize, like, when you're doxing, releasing your address, as happened to me, your family's address out, it puts this constant state of fear in you, even when you're in your own home. Like, I don't know if they realize that. So there's the doxing, and then, of course, the punch the Nazi meme was meant to be cute and funny. But when they label such a large segment of the population as Nazis, it's going after a lot of people who are innocent and law-abiding, such as myself.
Well, they're also calling Jewish people Nazis,
Exactly.
which is insane.
And then now more recently, the milkshaking was seen as this cute, non-violent form of political dissent. As you saw in the video, after I was getting beaten, I was trying to get away, and then they were pelting all these liquids at my head and in my face, and that blinded me. I couldn't even see really which way to leave. So to backtrack a little bit, sorry, now I'm jumping all over.
It's okay.
The march was right in the heart of downtown. Just before I was attacked, they were chanting, "No hate, no fear." This is the irony of it. I remember that very clearly. The crowd was chanting that. I was walking towards the front of the demonstration, thought I would get a wide-angle shot on my GoPro. Before I could get there, somebody bashes me really hard in the back of the head. And I've never been in a fight, Mr. Rogan, so I didn't even realize what had happened to me. I was knocked forward. As soon as I caught my footing, the punches kept coming from every direction, and all I could see was like people dressed in black with masks, and most of them that were hitting me had on these gloves that have the hardened knuckles. I think it's like
SAP gloves,
yes,
or tactical gloves. Yeah,
and it was just endless. And I could see in the background like this was in front of the Justice Center. This is the other sad irony. So in broad daylight, in the heart of downtown, steps away from the Central Police Precinct, from the Sheriff's Office, this beating happened. No police intervene at any point.
Did police see it?
I don't know. Nobody came to my aid at any point, before, during, or after.
So this happens out of nowhere. You get blindsided in the back of the head. A bunch of people punch you. I mean, how many times do you think you got hit?
Maybe 6 or more.
The fact that people dismiss this as not being a big deal is really horrific to me.
It is.
The fact that the people that are in Antifa that are nonviolent folks, which I think, I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to bring that up, that it's the extreme of the extremists, right? It's the people that think that that there's a call for violence and that there's a reason to do it. And even someone like yourself that is a nonviolent person is just there as a journalist, that there is a justification for just for whatever reason you want, just go up to that person and start hitting them. Even though they're not a threat, even though they're not doing anything to harm anybody, even though they're not putting anybody in danger, they're just being a journalist and you feel like you could justify hitting them. It's really disgusting.